Day Online, we're back again, and now let me introduce our top speaker, Glyn MacLean. He is the CEO of Red Cycle and very great expert. So, Glyn, hi.
Hi.
Are you ready to start?
I'm very ready. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, welcome to Blockchain Day Online. Excuse me. We're going to talk about China and the 1.4 billion audience opportunity for ICOs. I'm just waiting for the slide to change. So if I push the, there we go, the button. And thank you. So the China and the 1.4 billion people audience opportunity for ICOs. So I'm presenting this with the help of an expert, Simon Young. Those of you who are seeing me for the first time can feel free to connect with me via Telegram. This session is all about you and turning your aspirations into the most value possible. To this extent, China is the biggest market in the world. There is no place you could have a bigger aspiration for on Earth. A single city in China is greater in population and infrastructure than most countries, except maybe Russia and America and Ukraine, and maybe a few other really large countries. But let's get real. China has the biggest population in the world, and this presents a huge opportunity. The sheer size of the market presents a massive scale of opportunity, except for two things. There we go. It was great to have the music. It made me want to dance. Maybe we need to get moving a little bit with the music, so that's good. But look, the sheer size of the China market presents a massive scale of opportunity, except for two things. We have a regulation barrier and a cultural barrier. A regulation barrier and a cultural barrier. So the 1.4 billion question, is China an opportunity for ICOs? And can we overcome those barriers? So to answer this question, I'd like to now introduce you to one of the world's leading experts on taking Western businesses in. Simon is known as a key opinion leader, or KOL, or otherwise an influencer on China. He speaks and writes fluently in Chinese and has leading insight into the China market. We've gone a slide too far ahead, but anyway, so Simon is known as the chosen one. So because he's chosen by the world's leading marketing and advertising agency, Saatchi & Saatchi, as the celebrity presenter and the face of the 2017 New Zealand elections, supporting the call for Chinese New Zealanders to vote. So he knows the Chinese audience and has deep insight into the China market landscape. Simon is the co-founder, co-owner, and creative director of Red Circle Network, which is a New Zealand-based business that has the world-famous New Zealand All Blacks rugby team and Heineken amongst the global client roster, providing China business advisory, education and training, technology implementation projects, marketing agency of record, lead creative producer, providing marketing ear support for on-the-ground activities. That was a mouthful. He does a lot of things. Leading outsourced management for Chinese social media and payments commercialization. So Red Circle Network has innovated a China Business Ready program to support businesses to prepare for China commerce. So that's the nature of the person who will be speaking in just a moment. Over to Simon.
Thank you very much, Glyn. Don't know, can everybody hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Excellent. Great to be here today. Thanks very much. So the important thing to understand about ICOs are currently banned, but we have connections to technology developers in China who are working with government departments and large companies on blockchain development. So the underlying technology is of great interest to China. What it says is that the government wants to rein in the cowboys. They don't want to the actual technological change. They want to lead it. The reason for the great caution that they're having is because if you can imagine 1.4 billion people, you're going to also have the most cowboys riding around causing havoc. So the Chinese government has to step up and regulate this. So it does look very tough at the moment for ICOs and for people in cryptocurrency and blockchain, but China has a very obvious commitment to lead the way. So the regulatory environment is going to change eventually. There's also a cultural barrier. So there's a language barrier, obviously. Chinese is a language that's very different from most others. And Red Circle Network resolves that for our clients with translation services of content and context for the market. But there's also a cultural norm that's shared across a lot of different Asian countries, is that it's very difficult to directly own something as a foreign company. So the Chinese system encourages collaboration, which is a mind shift for a lot of businesses outside of China that want to come and do things the way that they do it at home. This is a big mindset change because it requires us to set aside our ego and be prepared to work with a local organization or people and then develop your blockchain solution or your ICO in China. So what we find is that people have to come to the realization that what you know, won't help you when it comes to China. So that's what we spend a lot of time on the mindset with our clients. We do provide a lot of different services, but it eventually comes down to this main point: what you know won't help you, so you should get in the know. And that's the coaching that we do. So the thing that removes the barrier for an ICO is being coached to understand how to partner and who to partner with. So we're called Red Circle Network. Key word is network, because we already have the networks in place to help you establish your presence in China and then begin to explore the marketing potential. So particularly involved with blockchain is payment systems. So because China developed its technology much later than other nations, we have the leapfrog effect, where there's much more rapid development in recent years. So China bypassed Visa and MasterCard and were among the first to adopt and really champion mobile payments with Alipay and WeChat Pay. If you're in China, cash is a very unusual thing to have. It's a mobile first world. So RCN is now involved with supporting CPay to connect into the China market, and it's possible to access the WeChat Pay wallet through WooCommerce partnership to activate blockchain-based payments with CPay. That shifts cryptocurrency to WeChat Pay or vice versa. That's the kind of thing that can happen, and ultimately CPay can globally replace existing systems. I'll actually hand back over to Glyn to step in and talk about his advisory role for CPay. Glyn.
Yes, well, look, I've only recently come on board as an advisor to CPay, but it seems blindingly obvious to connect CPay payments with other commerce intermediaries or middle people to create payment partner pathways. Gosh, that's triple P. So that more people from the West can come into Eastern commerce systems. So it's about, we call it cross-cultural value exchange. And so it's about data interchange between different countries across borders, so that we can have a seamless, reliable, instant value exchange between countries and vendors. So this can come into Eastern commerce systems. So imagine having a cryptocurrency from the West and then using that in WeChat Pay wallet in China. So engines like CPay could actually enable this. And this would work much like Shapeshifter operates in the Wirex card. So anyone who knows the Wirex card system knows that it uses the Shapeshifter engine to transfer or exchange one cryptocurrency to another. That's a company based out of Gibraltar with doing some great things. It's a very popular card, but it's based on the Visa debit system. And so you have an engine like CPay acting as an engine for Wirex or anyone that needs that sort of payments engine, like Apple Pay, for example, or in this case in China, we have Alipay and WeChat Pay. So for all China commerce, you can now earn transaction and platform licensing fees through a company like CPay, which would be a bit like Oracle and PayPal all in one. So CPay would combine AliExpress, eBay, Visa, PayPal, but without using debit or credit cards. And that's the point that Simon made, is that in China, they don't use debit or credit cards. They throw them away. They're no good to you. You will use your mobile phone with WeChat Pay, and you'll walk into a shop with your mobile phone and buy things. And so that's quite strange to people, to think that China is so far ahead of other countries in terms of the way that you pay. Simon recently went to China, providing on-the-ground support for one of our manufacturers distributing into China, and we put money onto his wallet, and he used his mobile phone to catch taxi, and everything that he did in China was through his WeChat Pay wallet. So, it's faster, cheaper payment systems that replace Visa or MasterCard debit. So blockchain-powered version of WeChat Pay, Alipay, Apple Pay, PayPal. So with CPay, they launched in December 2017 in a test mode in Spain, and already released a mobile app. It's on the Google platform, not on Apple just right now, but there is a web app available for an HTML5 code. But May 2018, CPay launched its own blockchain built on the code of Dash, for those that know what that means, and have their own masternode network, which will later serve the payment network. Anyone can start CPay masternode. It's necessary to have 5,000 CPay coins, but this democratizes incentivization as a modern convention. The project team is developing its own innovative system of automatic setup and activation of the masternode, which will simplify the process for beginners in mining and so on. But today the reward of the owners of masternode is 45%. So we're giving an example of an engine that can be used for commerce to connect East and West, that can actually replace Visa and debit and so on. So just one second. We'll change slides. Now, I showed this last night, but there were lots of links you can go to find out about what CPay are doing in terms of that kind of commerce engine. I'll just hand back over to Simon now.
Sure, thank you, Glyn. Yes, so looking at collaborative innovation, so this has been a theme of what Glyn's been presenting throughout Blockchain Day, or these 3 days. Disruptive innovation is so 20th century, but the theme of the 21st century is collaborative innovation. How do you actually do that in China? There are a number of business structures that you need to look at, and our partners in the network in the accounting field can give some really specific advice about this. But basically, you've got a wholly foreign-owned enterprise, which is how most companies eventually come into China. You've also got joint ventures, and you've got there's a few other structures that are there especially for financial-based companies. But again, it really, structure aside, it comes back to the mindset of understanding why you're there, and understanding that China has some real distinction from other markets in the world. It's the best way to think about China is as if it's another planet, because You've got a language that is, as I said, very different from most other languages. You've got a technology infrastructure and system that is very, very different, and we'll go over that briefly in this presentation. And you've also got a financial system that has some real constraints on it. So with that in mind, we'll just go to the next slide, which is about compliance. So as some of you probably know, ICOs are currently banned, and cryptocurrency exchanges are currently banned. So in that environment, you might be wondering, well, how can anybody do anything? And yet there's still a lot of activity around cryptocurrency. There's been the development of the IMO, the initial miners offering, which acts a little bit like the open source movement. There's a great quote, and because this is a brief presentation about China, we'll keep it at a very strategic level. This quote is from the man who was Chairman Mao's interpreter back in the 1940s, an American man. He's now 90-something and consults on China. He said, there's no country that has more laws about every aspect of life than China. And there's no people who are so committed to getting around those laws as China. So it's a very legislated country, but there's also embedded deep within the culture for thousands of years an entrepreneurial spirit that works its way around regulations. So don't be disheartened by the current environment in China. There's still definitely activity going on. So that's just a few words there about compliance. If we can now move on to audience engagement. So how we do audience engagement in China. So a lot of you participating in Blockchain Day, you're here on the live video stream, but you're also in Telegram in different groups. So Telegram is the chat app of cryptocurrency, right? In the same way, WeChat is the chat app of China. It's a made in China app, so it's native to China. They've tried to make their way around the world. We're getting near, the billion user mark. But the misperception that people have about WeChat is that it's just a chat app. It is a way of life, and that is because payments are integrated so tightly within WeChat. Anything you want to do, you will probably be using WeChat. Alipay is the other very large payment platform. Those two are vicious competitors, but the advantage that WeChat has is that it is a social media as well as a payment platform. So it has the ability to basically take over your whole life. And now what you see out of China is unmanned retail, people coming into retail and completely interacting just using their phone. Quite extraordinary. And so what we do for our clients who are coming from outside of China is repurposing content from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, repurposing that content into WeChat, the WeChat environment, so that there can be a translation of content and context. We work with Kawo, which is a really powerful content repurposing platform and a collaboration platform. Again, collaborative innovation. We don't have all the answers. You, the client, don't have all the answers. Together, we have the answers. And also, the audience out there has all the answers. So there's some automated reporting that we do, how many impressions a certain communication got. But also there's the really important thing of what did people say? How did they respond? What was their sentiment about this? So that's a big part of that repurposing of content.
Simon, do you mind if I quickly share some stats with the audience?
Yeah, go for it, Glyn.
Yeah, thank you. Just to go into the next slide where we're talking about Western social media reach into China, it's important to know that Facebook numbers look really big, but watch what happens next. We're just going to change the slide again and look how the numbers go up. It looks like 52 million. Whoa! Look at that, 846 million people. So if you want to reach people in China, the way that you do it is through the WeChat app, and it's because they're using it for all their payments. That's pretty important to note, right? And so the other thing about engaging people in China, if you're an ICO and you want to reach into China, find out what's going on, you'll get that within the WeChat app. Around 80% of all online engagement is happening in mobile, but around 80% of all engagement, all up, is happening in WeChat. So it's pretty important to understand that that's what's going on. The other thing is this, that the virtual private networks, basically it means that most of the, or many of the applications that work in the West don't work in the East. So for example, Google banned in China. A lot of people say, well, Google's involved with the American government. That's true. They are. And so China has decided, for all kinds of reasons, that Google can't have access there. So there we go. So which devices are they using? Well, a lot of Apple, but actually you'll find that in China they have a lot of their own brands. And so the brands that we know and love in the West are not necessarily the brands that are being used in the East. One of the most important things that Simon's taught me, and I work with Simon on a daily basis, is that what we know won't help us, and we need to get in the know. So what we know in the West won't necessarily help us in the East. And so when I came along, I didn't know. And so Simon taught me. And it's difficult for Simon to talk about himself, so I can say that about him. I can say that he knows what he's talking about. And I think that's pretty important. You want to have, if you want to go into China, get a China expert. The other thing, I'm involved in the technology stack, or effectively all the technology that we implement regarding the WeChat API. And there is a tremendous amount of engagement that you can do with audiences with the WeChat API. And the good news is that blockchains and smart contracts can connect to the application protocol interface, or the API of WeChat. Lots of things that you can do, lots of programmability to reach Chinese people. But in order to do that, you've got to have a WeChat official account. And that's pretty important to know. That would give you the capability. So one of the things about getting capability is having organizational capability, that you've got to learn. So if you don't know something, you've got to get on the path to learning. And you're not going to do that unless you make a commitment. And so we're just coming towards our questions and answers time. Just before we get there, I'm going to just move forward to the next slide, because I know that some of you want to learn about China. And so you can connect to Simon and directly. There are some QR codes. You can use your Telegram app to connect there, or whatever device you've got on your, or app you've got on your mobile phone, to scan those QR codes now and go and connect to Simon's various Telegram accounts. Now that'll be available later on. And then if you want to connect to me, you can do that through the Glyniverse, I call it, because really in my universe, it's all about you. It's all about value to you. And so what I'll do now is we'll step into our questions time. And if anyone has some questions, they can feel free to ask them. However, I'll hand back to Simon, because Simon might like to make a few more points just while we're waiting for those questions to come in. So back to you, Simon.
Sure, I can actually see a few questions on Telegram already. But just talking about that last point, which was capability building, the way a lot of Western or non-Chinese brands go into China is as if China is not going to last. And what we've seen at Red Circle Network, what we've staked our whole business on, is that China is becoming the dominant force in the world, economic force, and we'd better adapt. And we come from countries that don't have a strong background in Chinese culture and history. And so we obviously want to take advantage of commerce, but an insight that we found is that it does start with culture. Culture is a sort of a non-threatening way to get into the future, if that makes any sense. So you know, the 20th century was in many ways the American century. The 19th century was perhaps the British century, perhaps. And the 21st century is definitely the Asian century, and very perhaps the Chinese century. One of the questions that has come through is, are there fairs in China where you can meet a real investor? To kind of answer that question, yes, we help our clients with virtually enabling them to go into China. But a really important part is to go and experience that world, go face to face and meet the people who are in the industries that you want to be in, who are in and what you'll find is that even amongst competitors, there is a healthy respect for just how complicated China is. We have a saying, Glyn and I, about just because China, for so many things that the way I put it is, there's a lot of things that sound ridiculous about China that are actually true. And there's a lot of things that sound reasonable that are actually not true about China. So combine that with a fast-moving, fast-changing area like blockchain, and you're in for, well, let's put it this way, a lot of fun. If you want to look at it that way, it's a lot of fun. Yes, it's also a lot of stress and a lot of unpredictability. But hey, none of us are in this because it's predictable, right? so that part about
Simon,
culture is really important. You go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. I agree with you. It's so true. I'm just going to go through. There are 3 questions in the chat room at the moment. So, what are the prospects for the development of Chinese market ICO projects? We're connected because we're a technology company primarily. We have a lot of technology implementation partners in mainland China, in the West as well. And one of the partners that we have actually have a connection to government projects being run out of universities in mainland China. And so, in fact, the prospects are very good because despite the fact that there are these bans going on, there's a lot of development going on. And in fact, Tubi, T-U-B-I, is a project which seeks to monetize photos and videos for everyday people, you and me. And one of the amazing things about China and Russia is that China and Russia are working together already. You know, China and Russia are looking to have a replacement for the US dollar in foreign exchange and with the yuan. And so we're going to see a lot of opportunity between Russia, Ukraine, and China, naturally, because you're friends with each other. Your countries are working together, and China is developing blockchain projects. So, but what has to happen is this, as Simon said, and that's an important thing. Simon says, I always listen to what Simon says, but the important thing is patience, and that we need to understand that if we prepare relationships now, collaboration, then when China authorizes the blockchain projects to go to market, you will have the relationship. You will have developed your productization, and you will have created the code. You'll have created the connections into the APIs of the different types of technology, and you will have massive scalability. That will be fantastic for your business. So that's for Louis Ferris, who is asking about what is the prospect for development of Chinese market ICO project. Susanna Schultz, how China legislatively requires ICO and blockchain technology. Simon says, a little earlier, Simon said that, you know, to go into the market, you need a partnership. So you need to work with another company. And I think that's an important fundamental, is learn to work together. because we are better together, and you will need the help. So it's important to take the ego and put it to one side and learn to collaborate and work nicely with people. And that means don't be racist, because if you want to work with another culture, you have to take the time, make a commitment, and understand them. It's like I should learn some Ukrainian and Russian language, right? So babushka, das vidanya, because it's respectful to you, and this is how we respect each other. Going down to Victor, I can't say your last name very well, I'm sorry, but are there fears in China where you can meet an investor, so places you can meet investors? Yes, well, I think the place is online. It's WeChat. There are our company is called Red Circle Network, which is meeting people, and mostly you can meet people online, like this event is online. And so when you go into WeChat, you set up a WeChat account, just like you have a Telegram account or a Facebook account, and you can start to connect into groups like the Tubi group. And there are many blockchain groups in Chinese. Of course, translation is difficult. So maybe you should make some friends, and who can read or write Chinese. But you can also use Google Translate and many translation services. But hey, entrepreneurs, those of you who are making your technology, why don't you make a translation app from Ukraine to Chinese for WeChat API? Why don't you do a blockchain
There's
project
also,
about that?
sorry.
Simon.
Sorry, Glyn. There's also on WeChat, it's got a built-in translation using Microsoft Translator, that whatever your phone's native language is will be translated automatically into, so somebody types to you in Chinese and your phone's language is Ukrainian, you'll be able to translate that message into Ukrainian. Now, is it foolproof? No. It's like any machine process. Sometimes it's great, and sometimes it depends on how much nuance is used. But certainly helps those early conversations.
Simon, you completely
Yes,
sure?
and I think.
Yes.
Sorry, you go.
Okay, WeChat Translator, it's a great thing, but I see a lot of questions for you, and I'm ready to ask you some questions from our auditorium. And the main question is, when we work in China market, what is more important, to have great project or great PR campaign?
Interesting. That's a very good question. I think the great project, if you have a good quality product, that will ensure that you attract the right people and for the right reasons. I think that's really important. I just want to ask Glyn, what's your thoughts on this question as well?
Well, I think you need both. I think that you need, as Simon says, you must have a good product, because word of mouth, people will talk. Simon is what you would call an influencer, and so when he speaks, people listen to him. And if you want to influence people, you must have something of value. And so I do think that the product itself must have value to the people. It must solve a problem fundamentally. But with that said, a good promotional campaign will sell something. And so I know in my career that sometimes I've had products which weren't the best product. And I've had products which were difficult products to sell. But I improved the marketing for the product, and the product sold very well. Because it's about finding a brand positioning or a market positioning for the benefit of a product. And what's most important then is to understand the customer persona. And Simon's very good at identifying the key points of value that matters to the Chinese consumer. And I think that when it comes to an ICO, you've got a productization, you want to make sure that you're really going to focus on something that matters to the Chinese consumer. So both, a good product and good marketing combined.
So we need to start ICO project in China with analysts of China society. Am I correct?
Yes, and like any market, understand what's the need. What's the problem you're solving?
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Glyn. Thanks a lot, Simon. It was really exhausted, and I want just to tell you that we all questions send you on your channels in Telegram and in WeChat. I hope I find you there, and all your questions will be answered and marked on our website. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.